Hello, Podtailers, and welcome back to another episode of Podtail Podcast. We are officially at season 12. Wow! 12 seasons of back-to-back amazing content. And as you can see, we're in a new location. That means a new partnership has come. Hotel Podcast, in collaboration with Eka Hotel, have finally come together to not only bring you banger content, but also make you aware of what Eka does. Eka is a luxurious, as you can see from my background, luxurious hotel and accommodation here in Eldoret. Not only do they offer amazing food and amazing accommodation, they also offer other services like spa. What's your spa? Hello? They also offer they have a fitness center, or say a gym. Hello, tuko hapo. They also offer steam and sauna. They have a pool. It is everything you need for a wonderful getaway. So if you're in Eldoret and you're thinking about a place to visit, Eka is the place. It is located at Rupa Mall. So, and we'll also be shooting all our episodes here at Eka. Welcome to season 12. Today, I am joined with a wonderful panel. As you can tell, I'm very excited. I'm joined with a very wonderful panel, and I'll give them an opportunity to introduce themselves before we get into today's topic. Yes.
Hi everyone, I'm Olivia. I'm a student at the Eldoret National Polytechnic pursuing diploma in information science and health records. Yeah.
I'm David Nyauke, resident guest here at Podtails and member of Accession's podcast. I also do comms and PR for CELTA, Center for Legal Support and Inmate Rehabilitation.
Hi everyone,
Hi.
my name is Donna. I'm a trainee advocate. I'm hoping to be admitted to the bar soon. I'm actively interested in human rights, women's rights, children's rights, and disability rights.
As you can see, niko na panel ya machopi. Today we're going to talk about a very interesting topic. But before that, I am your host, Cecilia. I work for an NGO that is an anti-FGM organization, and we are actively fighting to end FGM in Kenya, in Africa, and worldwide. Hey, so you say my voice is very guy. Anyway, today we're talking about something so interesting. Justice Obscured, which is a series that I started here at Podtail, is focusing on how every fabric of our society has fallen short to uphold justice or fairness or even safety. We talked about, in the first episode, we talked about rape culture. In the second episode, we talked about how our law also fails to protect us in particular areas. If you're a sexual assault victim, and how it fails. The third episode, we talked about men's rights and how men have uniquely been victimized in particular situations, and they also face specific injustices that are just for them alone. And in this episode, we talk about another fabric of society that has failed us. We talk about our education system and we combine it with our religious systems. In particular, we're going to talk about the church. This conversation has come up after what happened in the country. On July 4th, Christine Mungai dropped a very, very earth-shattering article. If you're in Kenya, you are shattered. The article was titled The Teacher and the System. The article is in two parts, and it highlights injustices that happened in a school here in Kenya called Alliance Girls High School, which is an elite school here in Kenya. And the story revolves, not even a story, it's an account because it's real, it's not a story. The account revolves around a particular teacher who was not only the German teacher, he was head of the German department, he was also the drama patron, and he was also the CU patron, and how this teacher used this influence to groom his students and later exploit them sexually. And this brought about so many things. So we're going to talk about grooming today and the silent pandemic that it is. All of us here have gone through a school system. As you can see, it's Nimachopi. All of us here have gone through a school system. And at one point or another, either you've heard of such a story, or maybe you could have been a victim of such a story. And today on the panel, we even have an alumni. Yani, we are bringing you live from the ground. So let's start this conversation. We'll start with you, Donna, because you are the one who's a pupil of, listen, how many people or what? You're a future advocate waiting to be admitted to the bar. What is grooming, and particularly sexual grooming?
Grooming is a process through which the perpetrator grooms the child, the adults around them, and the environment to prepare them for future exploitation, in this particular case, sexual. Yeah. So grooming just doesn't happen with the child, it happens with the adults around them, so that this adult has access to the child.
So he not only does the person prepare the child for this future act, but he desensitizes the adults around them. Nico class, Nico class. He desensitizes. We're going to keep using he as a pronoun, not because we believe only men are groomers, but it's easier for this conversation. He desensitizes the adults around them to not be able to pick up on what is about to happen. Sawa. So that is what grooming is. We can start by expressing what our initial reactions were when we heard of this article, or when we read this article. When you heard of it the first time, we'll leave you for best for last, since you knew the person in person. Hey, the person in person. We'll start with Olivia, and then we'll go to Dave, and then you'll explain to us what were your reactions? How did you feel about it? Were you saddened? Were you upset? What shocked you about this story? Things like that. Let us know.
For me, I wasn't shocked because it's something that happens. Ni vitu zenye hufanyika kwa most of the high schools, si ndio? Sasa at least someone alikuja akasema akaitoa, ili alisema ikamtoka.
Yeah.
Si ndio? So walikuwa wengi. Yeah. Oh. But it was not shocking. At least someone spoke about it. And maybe to others, they were not in that space to say it. Maybe they thought they won't believe me. Maybe people will judge me, you know, kwa sababu we are in 2025. Yeah. Utasema hivi, usemekane, kwa nini alinyamaza, kwa nini anasema sai? But this time round, at least someone spoke about it. Alisaidia wengi, and people came out. Sindio? Yeah.
I think what shocked me was the fact that I wasn't shocked. And then it makes you realize how deeply rooted this problem is in the society, because we're in a society where now communities would rather choose comfort over confrontation. Institutions would prioritize their reputation over the abused, and then shame is weaponized.
Yeah.
And it is so ingrained in us that we all coined this idea that if the person doesn't look like a predator, they're not a predator, and then we'll defend them.
Yeah.
Without thinking like, oh, there's something going on behind here.
Yeah.
And that's why it makes it so hard for these people to speak out in the moment. And even if you look through the process of how it all happens, it's like it's so difficult for these people to speak up.
Yeah.
Then you go online and you see people saying mbona kuongea ile time. You're like, they couldn't.
Yeah.
And us saying stuff like that shows we have been desensitized away from this entire situation, and that's why this conversation is so important. Yeah.
Madam, talk to us.
So I was on Twitter the day the article came out. I just like gotten off work and everything, and I open it up, and the article is there. First of all, it was a thread of the process through which Airo had attempted to silence the article and to prevent it from seeing light of day.
Airo is the teacher in question.
From like attempting to get an injunction to prevent the article from seeing light of day. So immediately, I think I agree with him. I was shocked that I was not shocked. And I was heartbroken for those girls. And when I read the article, I cried because there are people who, high school is a vastly different experience for everybody. There's some people who have a good time, others have a bad time. And for a lot of these girls, drama, CU was a safe space, particularly in a country that is heavily religious. And at a tenuous time for a lot of teenage girls, where you're still finding yourself, you're still understanding yourself, you're still getting to define your relationship with God. A CU patron is a bastion of trust. It's someone who you look up to, who guides your spiritual growth. So for me, it was shocking and it was sad. And I was heartbroken for all these girls who had a very nascent time of their youth ruined by an adult who should have known better. And of like there have been some social media campaigns and some social media conversations about this situation, and there is a and it points to a larger societal problem, because a lot of the conversations that people are having online are a microcosm of the experiences that these girls had in those schools. Yeah, because a lot of people asking them, why did you talk about it then? Particularly because grooming is so difficult to talk about and difficult to define, because the horror of grooming is that it makes the victim think that it was their idea to get close to the perpetrator. Yeah. And so there's an added layer of shame where it becomes like, I let this happen to me. So people push you to take accountability for something that is beyond you to take accountability for. So for a lot of these girls, on social media, there are a lot of disgusting comments about how these girls are coming out to this story now because they're jealous that he's married. They're coming out to this now because they're the ones who seduced him and it didn't work out. And a lot of other things. And it's pivoted to a whole other conversation about how teenage girls are these wicked, sensual Jezebels who put themselves out there and push teachers into corners where they have no option but to sexually harass and to molest young girls.
Yeah.
And it's a problem.
I like how the consensus is we weren't shocked, because it brings us deeper into this conversation of the fact that it happens around us so much to a point where such things don't shock us, and it's a reality that we need to be able to desensitize by talking about it and by also taking every action to educate on what grooming is. So one of the things that we realized in the story is the groomer had a pattern, and apparently, I'm saying apparently because they will be corrected by our choppies. Apparently, all groomers have a blueprint that they all align to. So let's talk about the blueprint that these groomers have. Is it the same, or is it different? Is it slightly tweaked depending on what the environment is? Is it different for a child than it is for an adult? By adult, I mean early 20s. Yeah. Talk to us.
I think I can speak on that. The process is the same because it's tested and it's proven it works. So I think it always starts with trust, building trust, and as she said, grooming is not only for the minor involved but also the parents. Because just to make it simpler, let's take the whole alliance cult situation because there's a little bit more nuance to other cases.
Yeah.
But it starts with communication with the parent. The parent now is like, this guy is good to the daughter. When the parent wants to call, do something, the teacher is always there.
Yeah.
So he proves himself trustworthy.
Yeah.
And then since the parent trusts this guy, the child obviously will trust this guy.
Let me take you back a second. Previously, you said something about predators don't look like monsters, right?
Yeah.
And I want to go back to the whole, before we go to the establishing of trust, is there a way that they select victims? Are there particular things they look out for in particular individuals that determine this is a better quote unquote victim? And let's talk about the victim selection process.
No, yeah. So, after now establishing trust, now that's when they start selecting victims. Because these teachers would be talking to multiple parents and they have multiple students. So they have communications with all this, but then they start finding the ones who have vulnerabilities. Lack of affection, people who are easily impressed because, home situation isn't good. And then they narrow down on you.
Yeah.
And then they start giving you, bits and pieces of things that you are missing in your life or things that you crave for.
Yeah.
And then now that continues to build that trust.
Yeah.
And during this time, your parent does not think twice about anything that's happening because they trust this guy.
Yeah.
And then after which now they start to isolate you from your friends, from your family, because this is so important for the next steps.
Yeah.
So once you start pulling away from your friends, start pulling away from your family, they make sure you understand that anyone who is against your relationship is the enemy.
Yeah.
and now you start pushing people away. Once you've pushed people away,
Yeah, you isolate.
now the gaslighting starts. No, actually, before that, now he starts stretching boundaries, like slowly. Starts with sexual conversation, some touches here and there, just to test the waters.
Hugs.
Yeah, just to test the
Inappropriate
waters.
hugs.
Yeah, they make sure you understand that. They make sure that by the end of the day, you don't know between right and wrong, and what's right to you is now wrong, and what's wrong you can't tell.
Yeah.
And now you're hooked. So one, you don't have a support system. You can't run to anyone because now you've alienated everyone.
Yeah.
And now they're starting to push these boundaries. Once these boundaries have been pushed, now the gaslighting starts.
Yeah.
Because it is so important for them to make sure you're the one who's protecting this relationship. So that by the end of the day, any fault kind of falls on you. And that's why when people speak up, they're the ones who are ashamed.
Yeah. That's
And
That's-
then that's the process.
that's war on your
Yeah.
mind. It's incredibly saddening.
Yeah.
It is. Donna?
You posed a very important question about the process through which they pick their victims. Yeah. Grooming can happen anywhere at any time. The most significant aspect of grooming is the power differential.
Let's talk
Yeah,
about
it's the power differential. And with the case study of Alliance, we see that Airo was a teacher, a well-respected teacher who'd been teaching in that school since 1999. Those are many years to
I
be
was
teaching in that
just being
school. You know, he's already understood the system. He's close to the board of direct. He's close to the teachers. He's
The
close to the
principal.
principal. He is part of key programs in the school. He's in charge of this girl's spiritual
He's
growth.
young also.
He's young, so he plays up the relatability
1999 he
angle.
was 25.
Yeah, he plays up the relatability
yeah.
angle. And so for him to choose victims, it's quite easy because in an environment like Alliance, it's high pressure. This is the first time that someone is big fish in a big pond.
Yes.
You've come from a place where you are lauded for your excellence, you are the best of the best, you're the cream de la cream. And now you're here and
Everyone
is the cream de la cream. You're all the same. Yeah. So you have to find something you have to find your niche. You have to find something that sets you out, that makes you feel special, because you've already gotten used to the validation of being special and smart and important.
But now it's taken away.
So a lot of people go into that school emotionally starved. So that school is a prime breeding ground, for grooming.
Yeah.
And then he picks out people. And then you will notice from the articles that his primary hunting grounds were, hate to phrase it that way, but that's the only way you can put it. His primary hunting grounds were CU and drama. People who had close proximity to him for a consistent period of time. People who were deemed to be the good students. Yeah. So to them, obeying the law and obeying authority comes as second nature.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so for him, picking victims was easy because these girls are emotionally starved. They need closeness. They need someone to make them feel special, particularly during teenagehood. We all remember what being a teenager was like. It was the pits, and you wanted to feel special and important and beautiful
and heard
and heard and seen and feeling like someone can understand where you're coming from, particularly because the rallying call of teenagers everywhere is like, nobody understands me.
Yeah, that was my mantra.
So it's like when someone gets close to you with the intention of making you feel seen and heard and special, it becomes difficult to extricate yourself from that relationship. And then he also builds trust and authority, not just with the parents of these girls, but also with the school administration. Yeah. So to them, he was the head of CU. He was the one who was preaching chastity
and purity
and sexual purity. And so for a lot of the school, it was difficult to find a way to hold him accountable because he is a positive male influence in the school. So for him, I think picking victims was easy, and the process of grooming has been well outlined by him. So he cultivates closeness, isolates you from other students, because Airo himself too, girls who are not in CU or in drama knew him as a mean, draconian, difficult teacher.
Really?
Yes. Yeah. He was very tough. He was very mean. He was known for giving absurd punishments.
Really? But in the German department, he's giving out mandazi and cookies to
Yes. And
madness.
taking girls out to Java.
Taking
Yes, I was like,
crazy.
Java. You know,
Yeah,
aliweza kujiuliza
go.
kwani nilikuwa wapi? You
You're not in the in circle.
So, you know, there's that. So it plays the role of one, preventing the peers of those girls from looking too deep into that relationship, number one, and number two, making these girls feel even more special.
Yeah,
And
because
making them
others
feel
hate him.
Yeah, others hate him, but they don't know him like I do.
They don't
And
know
other
him.
short stories.
My man, my man, my man.
You know. So there's
Actually, that
that
would have been
feeling
me.
of there's that feeling of they don't understand him like I understand him.
Yeah.
They're only against him because they're bad students and they get into trouble a lot.
Yeah.
You know, I've never given him a reason not to like behave in this particular way. Like kuna vile, because he's punishing other people strictly and he's taking out to Java and he's giving him mandazis and sausages and you're skipping out prep to go chill with him in the German department, it makes you even more special. And a lot of these young girls eventually ended up in positions of authority.
Yeah.
So they became prefects, they became captains, they became the ones who are upholding the law, yet they were breaking it by not being in class during prep time.
One of the parts of the article that I think was very outstanding that you mentioned was one of the students, her alias, her anonymous name is Mercy, and he called her his wife in school about pushing boundaries and making sexual comments and starting that conversation. And at the time, our class was being punished, and they had been punished to clean the dining hall. And then he felt like that wasn't enough, talking about him being draconian. Now he wants to add more punishment. And the girls went to Mercy and said, please, plead on our behalf. And she went and she said, okay, I think the punishment is enough for Mesimo. And then he came back and told the other girls, because wife amesema, I will no longer punish you. And that just goes to show how he was literally just making it so obvious. He got to a place where he was so comfortable. We talked about the victim selection, and also you talked about how he had groomed the adults. But even beyond just the school administration, there's a part of the Kenyan mindset that we need to address about feeling like an all-girls school is the safest place to put your child, because you're assuming that the enemy is the young boy her age and not necessarily her teachers in school. So that now parents have assumed safety for girls' school. I personally have always been in mixed schools, and my mother's biggest concern is I'll get pregnant from the guy in my class. But the guys in my class were also going through their own adolescence. They were just like, them, they're just thinking about funkies. But the groomer was always somebody, like you said, of some kind of authority that they had either through an age gap or through the dynamics of I'm your teacher, you're my student, or I'm your religious leader, you're a mentor, a mentee, things like that. So now let's talk about the system. Because ultimately, this is not even just about one particular man. It's about a system. The way we said we're not all shocked, even though we went to all different schools, it shows that this is something that is cutting across the whole country. Let's talk about the education system and its failures, not only to protect children from predators and grooming in this aspect, but also how they fail to react in, let me say, damage control, and how they fail tremendously in that area. Let's talk about that. Who would like to start? Tunakuangalia tu. At this point, sasa sisi tukunywe maji.
Right now, how do I say?
Your thoughts have not come together. That's okay.
No, but let's put it in this perspective. During I'm not from high school, but I finished in 2022 when we had two KCSEs. So I'm still fresh. So we used to have drama, we used to have games, we used to have music and all that. But most people don't know that It does not only happen in drama or music. I was in games, I was a captain. Eh, I was a captain. So it cuts across all. You will find a teacher comes, does those crazy things, and you can't say anything because you're in boarding. You have those two small cravings. That teacher will do it for you. You know, you want to call home at maybe at 7, as you were told. If you want to call home, and a secretary, ama you just look, you befriend like a teacher. So what I would like to say is the government right now, we have not paid attention to education like Kitambo. Kitambo, it was so strict. There were no stories like this. Aki mimi from me what my dad used to say, Kitambo, you know. But from Kitambo, me know it was so strict. How can I such issues like kama sahi? So the government needs to put more effort in maybe wa introduce nini zinaitangwaje zile za zenye you go to school you talk zinaitangwaje no
Sensitization, education.
yeah
Wale wa
that
kukuja
one.
shule,
They should introduce kwanza they should not bring these big people wanafawalete people like
The common
us.
mwananchi.
So because we speak the language they understand, tukiwaambia they will be open with us. Tuseme they will be open with us. They can't be open to someone who is older ama who is like principal. Wow, they can't, you know. So if we go to schools, if the government gives us a chance, we just go to those schools or to pay space. We speak to them. Maybe we'll talk to them. Maybe they will open up. We might do something.
Yeah.
Not immediately, but we can sit and decide on how will we help these people. See, only in girls' school, at a boys, they go through a lot. Maybe they go through a lot. They can't say it, you know. They can't say it because atasema guy ona ule mbona nani boy aje
Uko na umama?
uko na umama man up, you know.
Yeah.
Maybe itafanya self esteem ya huyo boy irudi wapi? Irudi chini. It does not appear to because sahi kila mtu anapay to attention to girls. Wamesahau boy child, which is so true. So the government inafaa kuchukua young people to speak to the high schoolers and those to small nini inaitaje teenagers. Eh,
I think that's a good point. Government portal tuko available kama unataka kutupeleka tuongeleshe watu nachiki tuko na machopi. I think now a question to our legal department is is are there things in the government or in our constitution that specifically protects our students? For example, what does it take to be a teacher? Lazima tu nipite tu niende tu nisome nini English literature I become an English teacher. Like is there blocks or anything checking on their character?
I'm passing this mic to someone. No, I think before we go to that, and I think this will point out to the larger problem is one of something that is so prevalent in Kenya is with weaponized shame.
Weaponized?
Shame.
Yes.
And just beyond this grooming thing, we can look at like victims of sexual assault. Like the minute you come out, you're shamed. You know, so you people are afraid to speak out. And it's also difficult to speak out in this situation of grooming is because the people who are the predators don't look like they are.
Monsters, yeah.
And they're in positions of power.
Yeah.
I think we all know about the story of sex for grades.
Yo.
And
In universities.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
crazy.
and if you try and speak up, your future is ruined.
Yeah, it's ruined.
Yeah, and nothing will happen to that person.
That's-
I think we need a balance where we should not listen to the victims blindly, because there are those few cases, but we should also be very concerned and hear them out.
Okay.
I think that is the first step, because if we look at, when it comes to government, policies are there, laws are there. It's just the implementation part is so difficult because of how the society and the culture is set up. So we can't really do anything about it.
Let me ask a question again to our legal department. So we know sexual relations with a minor is a crime.
Yes.
What if the minor was groomed while they were a minor, but the sexual relation happened while they were an adult? Like they just, like the stories that we are reading, the person just clocked 18. So what happens in such situation?
That's exactly what makes this whole
Thing
grooming
complicated.
thing dangerous. Because if there's sexual relationship before they're an adult, it's a crime. Like it's clear
Case
cut.
shut,
Yeah.
yeah.
There's
It's
no way of
defilement.
escaping it. But if the sexual relationship started after they turned 18, now this is a relationship between two adults.
Consenting adults.
Yeah. So we can make an argument that they're adults and they're consenting, but this person has been primed for the past like 4 years
Yeah.
into this.
So is their consent even consent if they were groomed?
You see, now that's where the line
Is
is
yeah.
very blurry. It's very because the lawyers of this other side will say, "Oh,
Consent is
consent
consent.
is consent. You can look at the text.
Yeah.
You can look at the relationship.
Yeah, you came to their house.
Yeah, but this person was pushed to this,
Yes.
and then as you see, they were isolated, so they didn't know any better. So can we really say consent?
That's the case. That's the case we're bringing.
I think it's also because you don't have a solidified legal framework around grooming. That's something that has been in the works for a long time, but it's difficult to clock because, as people say, like it's two consenting adults in a relationship. They don't care that this person was primed as a child, that their boundaries were eroded as a child. That when you read those articles, it starts with, in the second part, more talks about how when they'd go for music, for drama festivals, and they'd stand around people watching with him, and he'd comment about
Who looks
girls
better?
who are passing, how they're hot, how they're sexy, what he'd want to do to them. You know, there's not a lot of legal protections once someone hits 18, regardless of how safe or healthy that relationship is.
Unless it's
It can,
blatant assault.
yes, unless it involves now physical
Force.
chapwa. We don't have a lot of protections for psychological abuse in this country. We don't have a lot of protections for emotional abuse.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think another aspect here, ulijipeleka. When you read a lot of these stories, you see that
Weaponizing of him.
yeah, the weaponizing of shame. The fact that you as a victim are also put on the stand to defend yourself, to defend why you let this happen to you. Because when you read more stories, and even like for the rest of the articles, you find that he cultivated a culture where inappropriate behavior was normal, and then he'd isolate you and assault you. When Mo talks about how after high school it was normal for old girls, for alumni to
come
go
to
stay at his, like, come do a weekend challenge, come speak to the girls in church, and then sleep over at his house that night before, like, so it was like a sleepover of girls. And because at that time he was married to a girl who was also his student while she was in school,
Yes, please speak from experience.
to a girl who was also his student while she was in school. Like, he'd go to their home and the girls would be there, and it would be a sleepover. So he slowly eroded the boundary of going to sleep over at my teacher's place. It's normal.
It's normal.
Yeah, because other girls do it, and then there's the illusion of safety in numbers. Yeah, because even within those inner circles, he didn't groom or assault all of the girls. He groomed the girls in different ways, but not all of them were primed for sexual exploitation. Yeah, so in a group of girls, you'd be like, hypothetically, a group of like 5 girls, maybe he ends up assaulting 1 or 2. So because all of the other girls who you collectively have experiences with him have had such a vastly different experience with him.
Yeah.
It's difficult to talk about
Pinpoint, yeah.
because it's easy to gaslight yourself into thinking like,
I'm crazy.
I'm crazy. Like, did that just happen?
Yeah.
You know, like in those stories, the girls talk about how even while they were in school, there would be long, lingering hugs.
Yeah.
Sometimes his hand would stray and
Yeah.
like touch their butt,
Yeah.
or like he'd
His
hug you and
fingers.
squeeze someone's boob,
Yeah.
and you'd be shocked because it's like, this is a man who just today has told us to like separate ourselves
Or
from
he stood
sexual
up, he stood up and said
immorality.
he's a virgin. You know that story where he stood
You know.
up during Sijuya Weekend Challenge and said he's a virgin as well. So you're not thinking a virgin is touching your boobs because he's horny.
Exactly.
You're thinking, no, it slipped.
Yeah, it slipped. Like
Yeah.
something
It couldn't.
something must have gone
Yeah.
wrong. It was a mistake.
My boobs are just big. They're everywhere.
You know, so it's easy for you to blame yourself, or like when something happens, like there's in the first article, there's a girl who he groped her while she was still a student, and it
Her
happened
name
in
was
the German
Cecilia.
department.
Her name, alias is Cecilia. Cecilia, I felt for you.
Yeah, and it happened in a German department, and it happened senye stima ilikuwa imepotea, and they were in the department by themselves, and he put his hand up her shirt and grabbed her boob, and at that point
And then acted like nothing.
and then acted like nothing happened. After that, it was just business as usual.
Oh, my water.
So the cognitive,
Yeah.
the testing of the boundaries, the cognitive dissonance of being like, this is a person who I trust with my spiritual growth. Did that really happen?
Yeah.
Was I just imagining things? You know, so it becomes difficult to talk about because it's also difficult to articulate exactly what happened,
Especially when you're a teenager.
Yes, without also having to bear the blame, because
Yeah.
as a society we treat teenagers as inherently guilty.
Yeah.
Hao ni vichwa ngumu,
Inherently
hawataki kusikiza.
Yeah.
They are wamejaa hormones. In fact, that's the phrase that they use.
Sinikasirishe.
They're hormonal, and so it lends itself to the victim blaming, being like, they asked for it, they seduced him. When you see a lot of the conversations that some teachers had in the wake of these articles, it was like, hey, you guys have never taught in a girls school, ni kugumu kwa wasichana na kuwekea matiti kwa mgongo. Crazy.
Girl.
Right?
Girl, bah.
You know, like as if you're not the adult who had the responsibility to guide this child.
Yeah.
Because as much as we say, okay, yeah, they're teenagers, they're horny, they're developing, whatever, it's your responsibility as an adult to be the one to draw boundaries in that relationship.
Yeah.
Because that teenager sure as hell won't do it for themselves,
Yeah.
because they don't know any better. And particularly because in single sex schools, there's the demonization of sex. You know,
It's so taboo.
Yeah, it's so taboo. Kuwekewa paraffin kwa chakula. And
Everything is real.
yeah. Yeah, it happens in a lot of schools.
Mimi nilikuwa a really good school because those things were not in my school.
You know, so there is this idea that their bodies are inherently sinful and need to be strongly controlled.
Yeah.
And the people who are controlling their bodies or policing their bodies are the same people who are abusing these children. So they are uniquely placed to carry out that behavior, because grooming just doesn't happen in girls' schools. It happens in boys' schools. When the article came out, boys were talking about how their school nurse was grooming them and having sexual relations with them, female teachers, cooks. And you know, there's assumption that it's just that grooming happens just between teachers and students. It happens with any adult in that
Yes, school.
vicinity.
Yeah.
And then because we're talking about Airo and the church and how grooming occurs within the church space in
We'll
relation
get
to
there.
students,
Don't jump the gun.
I won't jump the gun, but sometimes the adults that we invite over into these schools to give talks, there's a prominent figure who has a lot of similar scandals by the name of Ken Gomeri. Yeah, by the name of Ken Gomeri. And this man had unfettered access to children in schools. He was doing those weekend challenge things. He had a program, I think it was called Badilika Camp, where watoto wa high school and watoto wa primary school would come over for like a sleepover camp for the whole week, and he'd be the one in charge of the program, despite the fact that he has a pattern of inappropriate behavior with young girls. And so a lot of the times these people are also in cahoots with each other, that they enable the abuse of these young girls in schools?
This is such a heavy conversation, honestly. I think the more I talk about it, the more I evaluate my high school experience. And I had shared with the team before we got live about how I personally would have been the perfect victim for such a groomer. Because coming from a South Sudanese background, South Sudanese girls were the only social setup we had was school and your big family. So when I would go to school, I was craving human connections apart from my siblings, apart from my uncles and my aunties. And so I would do anything to be friends with anyone, especially a cool teacher. I would have gone to Java. I would have gone, I would have been the prime to be groomed for such a thing. But I think the only thing that saved me from a groomer was my temperament, that I've always been a really loud person. I can barely keep my own secrets. Zako ndo nitaweka. Unaweza nisiambia mtu I'm sorry. Nishaenda home nishaambia sister yangu nishaambia mama yangu nishaambia kila mtu. That's the only thing I think people could tell who is eka siri. It's bad. So now beyond that, let's go to, of course we talked about how the school has failed. The school in the article would even later try to block the article from coming out by
yes.
talking about the school's image, talking about the school's reputation, which still goes back to this whole thing of systemic injustice, that you would prefer that the school's reputation be kept intact so that you could keep getting students who will keep getting assaulted instead of dealing with this one person. So there's that whole system. The school has greatly failed by one demonizing women and their hormones, or young girls and their hormones, and acting like these hormones they're like wild dogs. Like it is incapable to control themselves to even a point where you would put things in their food. It's insane. And then beyond that, going a step further to even when such cases happen, you want to cover them. Unataka to deal nayo ndani ndani. That still goes back to what I talked about in the first episode about rape culture, about prioritizing how we look as a society, giving up this one front instead of actually dealing with the violence that are happening. And then now, because this story is very nuanced, this person not only was he a teacher, but he was also the CU patron. He was a PK, a pastor's kid, and his father was is the pastor to the church that is like this close to the school. So now let's talk about how also our religious systems in this particular situation, we're talking about the church, how the church has failed in holding people like this accountable, right? Not only has it failed to hold them accountable, it covers them, it hides them, it protects them. Let's talk about that because disclaimer, I'm a Christian. Disclaimer. So let's start. Let's talk about it quickly as we wrap up this conversation. Do you have something to say?
Yeah. A while back, like 2 months ago, I'm more of a social media person. So there was a time, there were stories, pastors were sodomizing, to do what. We can't say like the pastors are not involved. I don't know how they do it. I don't know how they make them fall into their traps. I don't know how they do it by the way. Maybe they say ni shetani alimuingia. But the church, we can't say like it's also a safe place right now. It's not a safe place. I don't say when you tell me, did you go? Me, I didn't go to church, but I prayed. I don't believe in pastors right now or priests or who. Even those priests, there are rumors out there. Sindio, there are rumors. So right now, you can't trust anyone. Ara ikwe pastor, ikwe pope, ikwe nani. Me can't trust anyone. So the church, kuna they say wamejivalia ngozi ya kondoo. They have wako na last, tuseme tu hivyo. They want to taste. How does it feel? Uko nje, hata siwezi watetea.
Yes.
I think we cannot downplay the role that the church has played in this particular incident and in many other incidences of grooming. Yeah, because we talked about this. The step one of grooming is the power differential, then trust, establishing trust within that power differential.
Yeah.
And the church, by virtue of being the church, is already in a position of trust.
Yeah.
So people attached to religious institutions have the trust of the people. Yeah. When you take your kid to church, you trust that this is a place where they'll be safe, where they will grow, where they will improve as individuals, and they will deepen their relationship with God. And we see it a lot in the article with Christine Mungai, where a lot of the girls who would finish from Alliance would go join Airo's father's church and bolster the membership there.
Yeah.
Because Airo is the one who has guided them spiritually, he's been the spiritual leader et al. And so wakaingia kwa hiyo kanisa, and it provided him an further avenue to finish up the exploitation.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so you see that even after the story came out, the church released a statement that was very thoughts and prayers.
Yeah.
Vibes on
Love.
inshallah. Like we love
love your
everybody,
way.
like we're praying for everybody involved.
Horrible.
And even within the article, there's some girls who spoke about it with the church, with Airo's wife, with Airo's father, and they're the ones who are iced out of the church because they were willing to protect themselves and to protect the reputation and to protect, because I think also because Airo is so closely tied to the leadership of the church.
yeah.
Even within the church, he was a youth leader in his father's church. Yeah, other than being a CU leader, he was also a youth leader in his father's church. So unatoka CU unaingia kwa kanisa ya baba yake yenye bado unafunzwa na Airo, you're still being guided by him. And then I'm also a Christian, and the concept of forgiveness. Yeah, the concept of forgiveness, the concept of forgiveness as a way to avoid accountability. Let me be exact.
Yeah.
So you find that these people have been victims to him, but when you bring up the matter before the church, they're like, let's pray over it, let's fast over it, let's confess our sins, and let everybody is forgiven, as if you too, by virtue of it happening to you, are sinful and you need to be cleansed.
Yeah.
You know,
From
so
this particular act.
Yeah, from this particular act. And even in the article, it's so interesting to me that when there is a segment of the girls who went to tell Airo's father and to bring the matter up with the church, and they talked about how that church was a place of quote unquote a safe space of openness where you are expected to confess your sins before the congregation and to have them pray for you and pray over you, but nothing of that sort was done, particularly for Airo. And then it was a very interesting highlight to me that a girl who would get pregnant, even if the father would like angeruka hiyo mimba, she was expected to go and confess and to pray, aombewe, atafute msamaha. Yeah, so like there's an aspect of misogyny within it. Let's call a spade a spade. Yeah, where girls are held accountable for their own dehumanization and for the sexual violence that they experience. And I've talked about it several times. The fact that girls are treated as Jezebels, as animals on the prowl.
Yeah. I think to weigh in on this before Mr. David atufunge. I think a part of it that also was highlighted in the articles was the shock factor of the duplicity. That with the church, there was that the double standard. Yeah, you expect it of other people, but when it's coming to you, you don't do it. Or even with Aero, you preach about this, but you don't do it, and it shows not only are they what you're saying, about kuvalia ngozi ya kondoo, it just shows you that kind of hypocrisy that the Bible continuously speaks against. Yeah, you do this thing, but you preach something contrary, right? And that's anti-Christian. It is the opposite of what their scriptures that they hold to teach. The scriptures never teach us to forgive predators, Yeah, it says take them to the law. There's a reason why there's the law of the land, or things like that. So there's that part. That's why when I was reading this article, I was especially the second part, there was like a lot of sadness for me, because I was just like, everything is completely laid out in scripture. You know, in First Corinthians, we have a situation. Let me preach kidogo. We have a situation of a guy who was having relations with his father's wife, so his stepmother. And when the apostle heard about it, he said, "Kick that man out. Mbona mnamlamba? Mbona mnambembeleza?" There's a part of society where we could ice people out and also report them. Like a huge part of discipline is unafanya nini yo, because there has to be that shock factor. Kama kuna shock factor, consequence haitaikuwa. Where is the place for consequence for believers, you know? How come other people were bearing the consequence of having their sin laid out in front of them? Yet, yeah, that was a standard that wasn't available for him. I think every part of this story is just a complete system failure, a complete injustice. Not only does it represent our education system, which tries to, talks about how it upholds the safety, because the boarding schools keep up this persona of, walking in the lights. We're safe here. It's just girls in this school. We prioritize the safety of your children. And of course, the church also puts up that, yeah, this is a safe space, but there's injustice in the darkness. In the article, or is it in an interview, Christine said that or I think it was in the article, that because we're walking in the light casts really long shadows, and now the shadows were creeping up. And these things in the shadows, we need to be able to expose them. That's why we are here for such a day. So let's have our final remarks as we close this episode, because we have gone over time.
Uh, um, the problem with the church is people are as so obsessed with looking holy rather than being holy. And I think it's so dangerous, because the way the Bible is, if read out of context, it can say whatever you want it to say. It can justify whatever it is you want to justify. And then we've seen examples of this. I think the problem we have, and I think the first step is what we're doing here and having this conversation, because we need to make the silence around this thing uncomfortable,
Yeah.
so that we can make justice possible.
Yeah.
Because we see institutions who prioritize their reputation over safety of the abusers, of the abused. We see companies who prioritize profits, and we see parents who would rather sweep it under the rug than have these difficult conversations. So I think we need to work on shifting our priorities, but first we need to start having these conversations. A lot of them, as the Gen Zs showed us how to do it.
Yeah.
We have to inject, so that this silence
Reject
becomes
and inject.
uncomfortable, so that's the only way change will start happening.
Yeah.
Otherwise, these people will always be protected, because they're in positions where they can protect themselves, and the institutions around them will protect them.
Yeah. Like we said, a predator doesn't look like a monster.
Yeah.
That's the worst part of it. That's why we said it's in plain sight.
Yeah.
And it's a silent pandemic, because you would never pinpoint an abuser.
Yeah.
Like,
And these things happen in spaces which are considered safe.
Yeah.
And with people who are considered
credible.
safe.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You're like, the credibility of this person speaks before them.
Yeah.
And you would never expect that thing to
Yeah.
happen.
That's what makes it so hard to spot.
Yeah. So that's why you're saying it's in such plain sight. So that there are things that people should be able to do in order to protect themselves. And I think in a different conversation, me and Mr. Dave over here, we'll talk about the family and protecting children, the role of the fathers, the role of things like this. That will be a different conversation that we're going to have. So our resident Nini will come back. Our resident guest will be back. Sawa, thank you so much, everyone, for weighing in on this conversation. I think this was so timely. Yani nilisema kabla July tuishe hivi, pap. We must talk about this while it is still
It's a larger conversation, because we've just gotten started, because like beyond what we've talked about, there's the whole online situation where grooming happens online,
Yes.
which is a different beast on its own. And then as you've alluded to, the role of parents in this entire situation. So
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, and the role of other teachers as well. Maybe that's a conversation for another day. The fact that many female teachers knew and warned this girl, but nothing was actively done about his behavior.
Yeah.
So How are we hiding the predators in our societies and in our lives? How are we preventing victims from speaking up?
Yeah. Yeah, this conversation is big. Clearly, we can keep going and going and going because the article brings up so much injustice. And that's the point of this series. It's justice obscured because there seems like we know of the concept of justice, but it's not clear. It's not clear because we keep eroding things. We keep pushing the boundaries like predators. We keep pushing those boundaries, and it's so unfortunate. So, as we wrap up this situation, as we wrap up this conversation for now, tell us in the comments what were your initial reactions? What were parts of this story, or this account that really stood out to you? What were the things that in this account that you felt like we need to be able to have a part two and talk about it? You guys perused over it. I need you guys to give in depth about, and we'll be back. We'll be back for sure. So make sure to subscribe, to comment, to like, to share, send it to every single person who you think will enjoy this conversation, and we'd love to have that. We continue to tell you that we are still collaborating with Eka, a beautiful space. If you have made it all the way here, you deserve to come to Eka. If you've made it to the end of this conversation, you deserve to come to Eka. So we'll be shooting the entire season, the entirety of the season. We hope that we're going to be shooting from here. So karibu to Eka and welcome, and thank you so much for tuning in.